Aloha, this is Brian Watkins, and this will be my video tutorial for Excel Exam 4 in Accounting 231. You should have your sample test. Remember, it's the same thing you'll see in the testing center except for these numbers here. So have it handy while you're working through our project. Like our first two projects, this one will be a portrait mode project, meaning we're going to print it out with the short side of the page up. So we're going to start by taking columns A through G and making them a 12 width. Okay, now just to show you what I'm doing, I'm going to pull this down here in the lower right. Hopefully you can see it. Is the control to zoom the screen, and I'm going to zoom the screen to make it easier for you to see what I'm doing on the project. Also, note that I've already opened and saved my work as Accounting 231 Simple Interest Loan Calculator. When you save your work, please save it as Accounting 231 Test 4, your name. That way I can sort it out and get it graded right back to you. Alright, so Test 4. We begin by preparing a title section. Okay, so we're going to use the title given, Control U, Control B, and the title given is the Simple Interest Loan Calculator. That's a bold and underlined main title. It's prepared by you, so put your name there. It's prepared on whatever date you're working on this. Mine happens to be July 21st. And then we're going to do a purpose line. And remember, the purpose is to help you and your client, or whoever's getting this, to know what the spreadsheet does. You're going to do dozens of these, if not hundreds, and you're going to be grateful that you left yourself with some explanation of what you intended. So you don't have to memorize what I say, but you do have to give me something that makes sense and is spelled correctly. So this spreadsheet will produce a schedule of monthly payments on a simple interest loan of any amount and any interest rate for a user selected number of years up to a maximum of 30 years. It will assume that the user makes only interest payments until the last month of the loan, when the principal is also repaid. Okay, this is like a bond, a simple interest loan. The bank gives you, in our case, $350,000, and your responsibility is just to pay the bank the interest every month. At the end of the loan, you give back the $350,000. Naturally, you and I don't get loans like this because typically in a credit kind of situation with an individual or even an unknown business, the bank is going to want you making payments of principal back. But if you're a large company with absolute good credit, the bank is happy to put money in your hands and make a certain interest amount. Okay, we want our purpose statement to be in its own little bubble in the spreadsheet that follows word processing rules. So we're going to select columns A through G, and go to the alignment box on the home ribbon and go up one side, down the other. So merge, wrap text, top align, left justify. Then put your cursor between the 4 and the 5, click and drag it down until it's right below your last line of text. This is a great way of getting text into a spreadsheet, but it's not good for numbers. Don't use merge cells for numbers. Okay, Control U, Control B. We're going to do our data section now. And the data section will get a color all its own. We'll use a light blue here. And we're going to wrap that color box with a thick border so that we can check our margins later. And our data is going to include the principal loan amount, capital A, annual interest rate, and loan period in years, which is given to you in the test. You see them right here up at the top. Okay? Now you have to remember that you're going to calculate a monthly interest payment. And then you're going to add those all up for the total interest payments on the whole loan. At the end, you pay back the total principal. And now you can calculate the total cost of this loan. Finally, we're going to have a check figure. I'll get back to that later, but it's basically going to be a recalculation of our numbers that we can compare and check to make sure everything is right. Okay, we want our cells that have these numbers in them to have the names attached. And I don't want to have to retype everything, so I'm going to click on the cells containing the names and go to the left one column. Just one. If we did 2 columns, it would put the name on 2 cells. And we only want the name on 1 cell. And if you recall, the shortcut is Control-Shift-F3. And that brings up the Create Names from Selection. If you forgot, go to Formulas, Define Names, click on Create from Selection, and it automatically sees those names in the left. So when you click OK, now these cells have the names. And if I go down the list, you can see the names. I don't want my numbers right next to these because it'll erase half of the... See, if I put a 1 here, it erases my title. So what I'm going to do is take each of these named cells and cut them using Control-X. You cannot use Control-C. You can't copy. It has to be a cut. And then click on E8, being really careful to stay in the same row as your first title, and then use Control-V, V as in Victor, to paste. Okay, so my principal loan amount, $350,000. I want to make sure that that box, principal loan amount, corresponds to this line. I've seen students accidentally accidentally paste the cells 1 line down so that what they think is the principal loan amount reads as the annual interest rate. So be careful with this step. Okay, 6 1/8, 4 years. The user entered items get the color to remind us that those are just numbers that the user entered. And we center those. But here we're going to make an exception. We're going to take the principal loan amount and click on the $sign for accounting format. That accounting format is going to preserve the spacing. It's going to line up on that decimal point. All right, monthly interest payment. We want to know interest, which is always principal times rate times time. The time here is month, so we want 1/12 of our regular interest rate. So we can take our interest rate, divide it by 1/12, okay, and then we multiply that rate times the principal loan amount. Okay, so just remember, interest times the principal is your formula, but you have to divide by 12 here because you're looking only for the monthly. Okay, I'm going to make this now a comma. See, and commas are the same as accounting without the $sign, so it's going to line up right there. The total interest payments, we're going to take that payment we just calculated and multiply it times the number of years in our loan, and then times 12 for the months in those years. And that gives us how much interest we've paid over the entire life of the loan. Okay, make that a comma. There we go. Principal payment is simply a reference to the principal loan amount, which we're going to repay in the last month of the loan. That's one of your easier formulas. We're going to make that a comma. Now, a new formatting tool that I want you to learn is the top and double bottom border that we use to show totals. So I go to my border box, down the list to top and double bottom border, which puts a single line below the numbers to be totaled and a double line at the bottom showing that this is a total. And we add the interest to the principal, making sure you don't add the monthly interest payment. If you add the $1,786, you're double counting it because the total interest payments already count everything that we're going to pay on the loan. So we're going to make this a little symmetrical by putting a $sign at the top and on the bottom. check figure we're going to leave blank for now, but that's going to hold a formula that calculates our total loan amount in a different way once we've finished. Okay, now we're going to do our answer section. Different sections get the different color. Let's keep it a light green. We also wrap it with a thick border. And the answer section has 4 data columns. And I give you those in your test, so you don't have to memorize those. Make sure you have your test handy. And what they are, we're going to have a blank line above and below the section bar. We're going to have the month, the interest payment, the principal payment, and then a running total of the loan payments. And you can see real quick that we're going to need to go between the E and the F columns and click and drag that out just a little bit. Okay, so now take our column headings, are bold, underlined, and centered. All right, we're making a smart spreadsheet this time. So if we have a loan period of 4 years, we only want to see numbers for 4 years. We don't want to have to fold it up or hide columns to get rid of the junk. We want to make it smart enough to only show numbers when they're within our desired loan period. So we'll start with a 0 here. Center that up. And what we're going to do is use the if statement. We have to use the if statement because we have two outcomes. We either show a number or we don't show a number. The test is going to be based on the count of a range of cells. Okay, so we click on the 0. That's B20. Ranges are defined by 2 cells with a colon in the middle, not a comma. Most important thing on this test is you've got to have a colon there. The second thing you have to do is you have to make this first reference absolute. And you do that by putting $signs before the B and the 20. Now, here's the shortcut that your Excel pros would use. Double click on the first B20. So you can see it's gray. Now hit the F4 on your keyboard. And that toggles it to absolute. It goes through all the modes of addressing. This is absolute. If I hit it again, now I have absolute row, floating column, absolute column, floating row, or everything floating, or a relative address. Okay, so we want the $signs there, and if you want, you can just type $signs. You don't, if you forgot the F4 trick, just type $B, $20. Okay, now let me blank this out real quick and show you something. One of the reasons why I encourage you to name your cells, and require you actually to do it, is that when you name those cells, if I go to Name Manager, you're creating, see these references all have $signs in them. You've created absolute references. So when I take the word interest rate and type it anywhere in my spreadsheet, interest, well, it was annual interest, wasn't it? Annual interest rate. It's always going to refer to that, even if I copy it somewhere. Whereas if I say cell G1, okay, well, we don't need to see that, but if I copy G1 down, you'll see that that churns from G1 to G2 to G3, but the absolute doesn't change. All right, so let's put those back now and finish up what we're doing here. Go back into regular view. Okay, so we're going to have an if statement. We're going to have a, okay, that can be lowercase or uppercase. And the count is going to be a range from B20 to B20 with that first B20 an absolute reference. That will always return the row or the month number. Now, if your month number is larger than your loan period in years times 12, then you're outside the scope of this spreadsheet. You only want to show 4 years of the loan period. If I'm on the first month of loan period 5, I don't want to show it. So if count is greater than that, if that's true, give me a blank cell. Blank cells in Excel are shown by 2 double quotes. If it's false, then I want it to show whatever the prior month was plus 1. That's my formula. So as I count that down, let's center it up here so we can copy it. So if I copy that down and turn on the formula view, you see that that B20 changes to B21, B22, B23, and so on. So this box that's being counted starts with 1 cell, then it has 2, then 3, then 4. So that's going to always tell us where we're at. Now, we're going to take this 1 cell. Remember, I'm not doing an autofill with numbers here. I'm just doing one copy. And I'll go down. Haha, here's a trick. If you go up here, you're going to see I've got 48 because my loan period is 4. I meant to do this, but change your loan period now to 30, and that will tell you exactly where you could stop because it will go to 360. Okay? So all these other things we could just clear. I think that will help you as you construct the spreadsheet. If you first change your loan period to 30, then we'll make sure everything's working. All right, so there's our month. Okay, put that up there. The test, see if I click on the logical test, is the count bigger than the loan period? If it's true, it goes blank. If it's false, it adds 1 to the prior month. Now the interest has to show up anytime, trying to be consistent here for you, anytime that I have a month number, that means I'm going to make an interest payment. So I check the month number to see if it's a blank cell. If it's a blank cell, then I want my interest to be a blank cell. If it's not a blank cell, I want my interest to be my monthly interest payment. That's my if statement for the entire project. So I can take that 1 cell, let's make it a comma first, and then double click down here on the corner, and it will go all the way down. Now you can see the value of turning your years to 30 because I could see that it worked all the way. If I had left it at 4, then I would only see it to 48, and I'd be guessing whether it would go to 30. Now remember, I take points off if your spreadsheet doesn't work for a 30-year loan. Okay, so make sure that you're constructing it with 30 years worth of formula. All right, so that's our interest. Principal is a different thing because the principal is only going to be repaid on 1 year. Sorry about that. Functions can be lowercase or uppercase. I'm just trying to be consistent here with uppercase. If our month number is equal to our loan period in years times 12, that means I'm on the last row of my loan. So I'm going to pay back the total principal payment. However, if it's not, I want it to be blank. Okay, so we've flipped the logic here. Now what we're doing is we're saying, is this the right line? If it is, put that number, because it's only going to happen once. If it's not, make it blank. Now, here's the tricky part. Once I hit enter, it's blank. Even though there's a formula there, it's not fulfilling the test because it's not the last month of the loan. So I have to do this kind of blind. I have to say comma format and then double click. Don't forget that. I get a lot of students that forget to double click this down at the bottom. So now if I go to the bottom, there it is. I can see that on the last month of my loan, it did pay back the principal. So my formula is correct. That's a tricky one because you don't see it there, and it's easy to just go to the next one without doing what you're supposed to. All right, total payments. Okay, this is the same kind of logic as I used for the interest payment. If my number is blank, then I want total payments to be blank. But if the number's not blank, I want to take the total payments from above and add to it the interest and the principal. Now, let me show you what not to do. If I just say add interest, add principal, I'm going to get an error. Why? Because I just added a cell that had a text in it. This one was fine because it's empty. But remember, this has a big formula in it. So if I look at the formulas, see, it's got all this stuff in it. So to get around that problem, instead of adding C21 and D21, you're going to use the sum function. The sum function protects you against that. I'm going to click on interest, drag to principal. Okay. The reason we use the sum is because the principal column has a blank text in it. Now, you say, well, Brother Watkins, this month 0 is blank as well. It's totally blank. It doesn't have anything in it, so it's not going to cause a value error like having 2 double blanks will here. Okay, and as far as we go down on this total, there's always going to be a number. When I double click this, it's always going to have a number all the way down to the bottom, even if my loan were, say, well, I did it. So even if it was a 1-year loan, every one of these is always referencing the one above it, so it'll either be a number or that 0. All right, we need to go back to this column. Okay, and hit Shift Control down. Okay, so that went and did the whole, I've highlighted the whole thing, and I'm going to make them all commas. Okay, that's a 2-point formatting error if you forget that. Alright, so if I put it on 30, I can see that my format goes all the way to the bottom. Now, when we get to the bottom, hopefully this number tells us exactly how much all our payments were, and hopefully it matches the amount that we said it should match, total loan payments. Okay, this is our check figure now. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that sum function, and we're going to take all of the cells that could potentially have numbers in them from payments, and we're going to add them up. And they better add up to the same amount as we calculated. So I'm going to subtract from it the total loan payments. Okay, now, right now it's formatted as a comma. If you have no format, it's going to show a 0. Check figures should be formatted as commas. And the problem here is, what happens if my interest and principal don't match? Then my check figure is going to show up and it's going to say, so for example, if I paid $5 too much in principal, I want the check figure to say, hey, you got an error there. Okay, now, there's 20 more points on this exam for the next skills. It's not enough to just show your person that you have an error. You really have to make sure your user pays attention to it. So I ask you to do a conditional formatting rule that will turn the background red and the text yellow if there's a discrepancy. Okay, the way to put a conditional format rule on a cell is to first select the cell. I don't know why I did that. Okay, we want to select the check figure. I could select a whole range of cells and have them all do the same thing, but here we're just worried about one cell. And it's on the home ribbon, conditional formatting, new rule. And the rule is going to say format cells that contain a cell value that is not between -1 penny and +1 penny. Okay, now, this confuses a lot of people. I can't say cell value equals 0 because sometimes I have a rounding error in my interest calculations of 0.00001. So there may be a number between -0.01 and +0.01, but that wouldn't be an error. That would just be a rounding. So we're going to make it not between those. So for example, if I have a -0.03 error, then that's going to be relevant. So remember, this is a penny, not a dime. 0.01, not 0.1. Okay, the format key takes me to my font, and I want to change the color of the font to yellow, and I want to make it bold. And the fill has to be bright red. So when I hit OK here, it tells me, okay, here's a preview of what's going to happen if my cell value is not between these two numbers. Okay, typically my cell value is 0. Is 0 not between? No, 0 is between, so it's okay. But if I have, say I paid an extra $100 in principal, that check figure is showing me that I'm $100 out of balance. And it also goes the other way. If I forget an interest payment, it's warning me, the banker, that, hey, my client owes me some money there. And it shows up in bright red. Nobody can miss that. Okay. So when I have a cell that behaves funny like that, that turns bright red, I don't want my boss going, what in the heck is going on? So every cell in an Excel spreadsheet, if I right-click on it, can hold a comment. So we go to the Insert Comment, and it comes up with a box, and we're going to type a note here. And we're going to say, this cell is programmed to turn red in the event that the total actual payments as shown in the answer section do not equal the calculated total loan payments. Now, I also want to make sure that I have a box capable of showing all that. If I don't, I'm going to take some points off, right? Because your user won't know how to see the whole message. And the object is to keep them from being frustrated. All right, so when I click away, that comment is now programmed. You see a little red notch there. So whenever I hover my cursor in that cell, my message shows up. Now, I can edit the comment. I can go back into the edit screen, or I can show the comment, which means it's permanent. So if I were a boss and I wanted to make sure that you saw my displeasure, I would make that comment always come up by showing it. But for our tests, I want you to hide it, because I want the comment to only come up when someone has a question about it. That's 10 points for this, and 10 points for the conditional formatting. And typically, the conditional formatting causes trouble for students because you forget that rule. So if I go back to Manage Rules, you see that rule? If you made a mistake and you applied a new rule, then make sure you delete the old rule. Okay, I've seen students that have like 6 different rules here, none of them working, and it's very frustrating. So just make sure that if you're going to go back and fix the rule, that you delete your old rule. Okay, again, what I did there is I selected the cell and I said Manage Rules. Okay. All right, we're almost done. So let's go now and page layout, print titles, header footer, custom footer, and put my file path there in the center. Okay, so let's look at my print. Oops, 30 years, that would lose me points. So I got to go back, I got to make that a 4. And it looks like I forgot to properly format my interest rate. Oof, glad I got to that. Okay, so we go interest rate, and we add 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay, so let's go to print here. My margins are off, so I'm going to shrink up the G. Now it looks nice and centered. I only have 48. I have you can't see it, so I'm going to pull it down, but I have a footer on my page, which is required. Now, one last thing. Hit the F7 key. It's not very hard. And then say yes, and it checks my spelling. Okay? I take 2 points off per spelling error, and I don't want to take points off for you. So make sure you spell check. And if your spelling is really bad, make sure that you edit your comment. Okay, so I'm going to edit comment. I'm going to copy everything I've just prepared off into my spreadsheet somewhere. Okay, it's still there, but I copied it so that when I F7, it checks that. Then I can erase it. Okay, that's how you would check this, because the spell check doesn't go into that box. All right, now you know how to do a really smart spreadsheet. You know how to do conditional formatting, which is a huge tool. It's really cool. And you're going to get 100 points on this test. So practice it a few times, get into the testing center. Looks like with all of my commenting, I still got it done under 30 minutes. So can you. Good luck.